Hello and welcome. It is episode number 26, the Hilarious Humanitarians Podcast. I am Frances Echeverria, licensed marriage and family therapist.
And I am Deanna Silverman, licensed clinical social worker.
We are here to talk about friendships today. And if there's one thing I hear all the time, Deanna, it's people, you get the people that say, oh my gosh, it's so hard to find a man or a woman or whatever, a partner. It is even harder to find friends, even though we're completely connected in so many ways.
I agree.
So before we jump into that, we want to remind you, we know you're listening to this podcast, but please, if you haven't already, subscribe and make sure to rate us. And we are fans of you going around to random people's phones as long as you don't get in trouble and subscribing as well.
No shame in our game.
No.
Not even an ounce. I'm sorry.
We're going to get an email from someone holding us responsible for getting in trouble. It's going to happen. Okay, so we're going to cover a couple of articles today that we found talking on the science of friendships, the ways to make friends according to science, and also where do you meet people. Also, the health benefits of friendships according to the Mayo Clinic. So that makes us sound very, very educated.
Like legit. We know what we're talking about.
Like we know what we're talking about. And also why best friend breakups suck more than getting dumped by a partner. So
at least it can suck worse.
Yeah, it's possible. Thinking about my last friend breakup hurt more than my last relationship breakup.
Yeah, well, so a lot of the articles I was reading, it definitely says that. A lot of people in response to like being, surveyed or whatnot. Yeah, my friendships were as significant as romantic relationships, if not more significant. They were talking about how like pop culture, the music we listen to, and all these like lovey-dovey breakup songs and pop culture movies. It's always focused on like the intimate relationship, but no one's making a movie about, well, the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
I've never seen it.
I have. I liked it. But anyhow, my point is that not enough attention is being focused on the significance of how important friendships are and how painful they can be when they end.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how changes in your life too can impact those friendships. We'll also talk about our attempts at self-care and pushing our comfort zone this week. We'll have a listener shout out as well because we have been getting lots of love on that. So as we jump into the topic of friendships, Deanna, would you say that you have a lot of friends?
I can say that I have a lot of friends throughout my life. I have definitely had a huge importance on friendships. I saw that from like my parents growing up, and it just was like a value that was kind of passed on to me. I also have a very small family. So in our family, I mean, it's not just me. Like my aunt has a ton of friends. My cousin has a ton of friends. My brother has the most impressive group of tight friends that are like family. So I think this is like, at least in the culture of my family, friendships are very, very important. I think when I was in my 20s, I'm not saying that friendships were more important because they weren't more important. I just had the time and space to dedicate myself to my friendships a little bit more than I do now. But with that said, and we'll dive deeper into the whole, like, when people are like, you'll text message or you'll call a friend and they just never call back or they don't make time. And I don't mean to point fingers, but I do sincerely feel like no matter how busy your life is and no matter what the friendship or relationship looks like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that like people make time for what is important to them.
Absolutely.
Like, and so it personally drives me crazy when people use, oh, I'm just so busy, because I just feel like it's a cop out and it's not even a good one. Don't get me wrong. You're allowed to be busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But using that excuse over and over and over again, personally speaking, like if I have a friend who just keeps blowing me off and uses that excuse, it's almost like it insults. Don't insult my intelligence, please. I can see the writing on the wall. Enough is enough. So maybe I'm being salty, but
no, I think it makes sense. In fact, there's a couple of mantras that I kind of live by. And one of them is you make time for the things that matter. And that can include people, that can include exercise, that can include sleep, that can include the people that, you choose to spend your valuable free time with, any hobbies that you're into, period. You make time for the things that matter, the end. And the first time someone told me that, it pissed me off because I hid behind this. I'm very busy and I don't have time to do this, and that. And yes, that can be true. But again, it goes back to you make time for the things that matter. So let's say somebody's like, well, I don't have a whole lot of time for self-care. Well, then it doesn't matter to you. So don't bitch to me when you are burnt out and mad and angry and pissed off at everybody. If friendships, some of them require different levels of interaction, and we'll jump into that a little bit. But I do have friends where I'm not a friend that needs to hear from my friends every day. But at the same time, there needs to be this attempt to connect. And sometimes it can get a little lopsided, if that makes sense, if you're the one that's always initiating.
Oh, yeah. I often feel like I am in the position of, more often than not, like the initiator.
Yeah. Okay.
Or at least when I was younger, I definitely was. And then, like I said, when I became a mom, my time is more limited, obviously. So when I do make time for friends, it's significant to me. Like I'm making this time because it's important to me. But at the same time, there needs to be give and take, because you just, like any relationship, if you're the only one that's making the effort, it's just simply not worth it.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned. And kind of going back to what you just brought up, it's one thing for somebody to just not really prioritize and constantly complain that they don't have the time or just making up excuses. But it is okay also to go to a friend or go to somebody you trust, or go to a friend that you trust, just to say, I'm having a hard time prioritizing. I am guilty of this. I really want to hang out with friends, and we'll say, hey, we should hang out sometime. And then a year goes by and we never saw each other. I'm one of those people where we need to get a date on paper.
You have to that's that whole thing of you make time for the things that matter. Calendar. Put it on there and stick to it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So that really, really helps me out personally, because then I can't get out of it. Not that I'm trying to, but I have to be honest with myself. And if I want to see friends and we aren't stuck to a date, and especially when everybody's life is so busy. So hello, if you don't have a date set, then it's so easy for people to be like, oh my God, I totally forgot that I've got this date with the post office, or like,
You're right.
I'm really tired and I'm just unwilling to suck it up. I don't know. So if a date is on the calendar, then I'm just way more apt to show up.
That was something I had to learn when I was older, because my family was the epitome of I don't feel good, cancel. And my mom had some significant health issues, but at the same time, it was just kind of this behavior that was very normal. I still feel guilty for canceling. Actually, okay. I'm coming up on my 19th year since graduating high school. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I feel old.
But what?
I know, like right? Next year's 20 years. Anyway, I know. Wrap your head around that. So there was a person that I was friends with, and we were supposed to go see Jewel at the big Fresno fair. And I canceled last minute, and I'm pretty sure he still went. And it has followed me all these years, because it was such an example of where I thought it was okay to just cancel on people last minute if you didn't feel like it was, you didn't feel like going or whatever. And I apologized to him in the last couple of years, almost 20 years later, because I didn't realize, and maybe the importance to him really wasn't that big of a deal, but I did feel like follow through starts with yourself. And so what I'm getting around to is when I put something on the calendar, it's happening. It's happening and it's important to me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and jump in with this article you found, because there is a science behind making friends.
At least according to this website. No, in all seriousness, I really like what they put down. These are some steps that you could absolutely work through and utilize in making new friendships. And it's taking from the perspective of making new friends as an adult. And I think that's important because I feel like I hear more often than not adults complaining about how difficult it is to make friends. And while I'm not disagreeing, it can be difficult. I also feel like, well, the same people who say it's difficult, like, have you tried anything outside of what you typically would do, which like has not really worked out? And usually it's like, no, I haven't really tried anything, but it's hard. Well, okay, we could apply that to anything.
Stop complaining about it though, and do something about it.
Right. So let's just get right into it. The number one, or not number one, but number one on the list, find shared similarities. Seems easy enough. I think that this actually brings me to a course that I took in college. It was a marriage and remarriage class. And oftentimes we'll hear opposites attract. And listen, I know a lot of friendships that work on that type of playing field. And I know a lot of intimate relationships that have worked. But in this course, what she was saying was, yes, opposites attract initially and some survive. But the more successful friendships and relationships that we see have a solid foundation in similarities. So she gave an example, and I'll always remember this. And this was like 15 years ago in this class. Let's look at it from the perspective of opposites attract. Your husband, let's say, only listens to country music, solely country music, doesn't like any other music genres. And you like rap music. That's it. In the beginning of the relationship, things are like, I'm going to age myself to hot and heavy. I feel like my mom just saying that, but like things are fresh and you're like putting on your game face and you're like, yeah, I'll compromise and go to this country music festival, even though I personally don't like country, but I'm doing it for you.
This makes sense. Yes. Okay.
And the same can be said for your partner who doesn't like rap, but does it for you. And over time though, typically speaking, people stop compromising as much, and what you end up seeing is people kind of going their separate ways and doing things by themselves. So now your significant other might be like, I don't like that music, I'm not going.
And you start to drift.
And you start to drift apart. So I'm not saying everybody does, but where you see people really not struggling as much with their connection with each other is when those values and the similarities and common interests are pretty tight.
Yeah. And you don't have to be carbon copies of one another, because I think that people can bring some variety. But, and this is where it comes into play, the whole idea of people grow and change, and can relationships, the same way we have to look at friendships the same way that regular relationships, like intimate ones are, is that if people are growing and changing, are they really fulfilling a place? I think you brought this up perfectly earlier. Sometimes pop culture makes it sound like friendships are tight and great, and I've always thought, what's wrong with me that I don't have these super tight friends that I've been friends with since forever? And, my college buddies that we've been friends forever. And I'm thinking, God, I've changed so much since I was in kindergarten. Of course, I'm not going to have the same friends. Who I was in college, I'm not going to connect with now on the same level. Now, can we kind of come together here and there and reconnect and enjoy memories and things? Yes. But I think sometimes loyalty is mistaken, for being like loyalty is important, but I also don't think you should be forcing yourself into something that doesn't fit. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. The one thing I hear all the time, you know what? Let me correct myself. I don't hear it all the time anymore, thankfully, now that I'm older, but I heard it all the time in my 20s was, I'll be talking to a friend and we're talking about her friend who's like nasty to her, super toxic.
Yeah, this happens all the time.
Yeah, really mean, disrespectful, talks down to her. And she's like, but we've been friends since 5th grade. So, and I'm like, so what? This doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't work in any capacity of any kind of relationship. If somebody is treating you like shit all the time, not just, oh, she was just having a really bad day, or he
Mhm.
was really moody or something, and he got bad news, and so he was mean to everybody just on that day.
Right.
If you're treating somebody like shit, you're allowed to walk away from that relationship if you don't see it ever changing. But people don't get a pass to treat you like shit because
They've been around.
been friends for 15 years. I used to hear that so much. It was mind-boggling to me how often I would hear people say that.
I still hear it.
Ugh.
I still hear it. And often, again, it would be cool if I had a group of friends that I've been friends with forever. But the reality is that I wrote a thank you note to one of my friends because she got me something for my birthday. And I was like, this is my 17th birthday in a row that you've helped me celebrate. But our relationship has had to change a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we even went through a period of time where we kind of disconnected and then came back and we renegotiated our roles within that friendship. To be perfectly honest, it was never even something that was explicitly brought up. It's just in that time I grew up a lot and the friendship needed to change. The dynamic needed to change. So keeping that in mind that, just like any other relationship, they grow and they change. So tell me more about the article, this ways to make friends according to science. So some similarities are important.
Right. So similarities are important. The number 2 thing they said is to smile. Okay. It says your body language matters. Smile and make eye contact.
Bitch face.
I struggle with this one.
Me too.
Big time. Because we've heard the whole resting bitch face. I joke that I was born with one and passed it along to my daughter. I have to always keep my face in motion, or else just the way my features are, you're the same way. Mm-hmm. We just look pissed off if we're not smiling. I don't know what to say about that, because if I was smiling all the time, then my face starts to shake because I tried it.
So you know what? I'll switch this a little bit, because I feel like walking around with a fake smile on my face all the time is not going to happen. Right. I have forced myself consciously in since the start of the year, to look people in the eye when I'm talking, to not wear my sunglasses everywhere, and to try and make eye contact, or at least not dart my eyes away and turn and try and hide when someone accidentally makes eye contact. And what I've noticed is that it has I always thought, do I look angry or imposing? And I think there's some of that in me, but I think part of it is subconsciously and non-verbally, I was telling people to leave me the hell alone. And I didn't really mean it. It was just my own uncomfortableness. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I get crabby. Even though this is a list that's made from science, this is the one thing where I'm like, shut up. I don't want to smile. Maybe I don't feel I don't know. You know what I'll say though?
By the way, you're smiling this
I know. I'm
thing.
smiling.
We both are.
I know. We're both cheesy smiles talking about how I personally don't like to smile. No, don't get me wrong. I like smiling. And I like when people smile. And I'm actually really good about smiling at everyone. I think we've talked about that. You're oh my God, no. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Just
moving on. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, what else is on the list? It struck a nerve with Deanna.
It struck a nerve with me. Listen, though, I can't get off this. No, for real. When I see people that aren't smiling, though, I take it as a challenge. And I also kind of feel a kinship to them, because I know what it's like to feel judged for not smiling. And people will always tell me how intimidating I look, or I always look upset. So I actually feel this weird kindred spirit, whatever you want to call it, connection with people who aren't smiling all the time. I'm like, what is up with this person? I think I love them. I don't know. It just feels...
Challenge accepted.
It just feels more authentic to me.
I get it.
But you know what? With that said, I'm also really envious of people who are always smiling. So there you go. There's my conundrum. Walking around not knowing whether to smile or not. Anyhow, okay, number 3 on the list is reconnect with somebody. And this is talking about what you just mentioned, how you can have a friend who it just ebbs and flows. I've had friends that same thing. I had a friend who was in my life through junior high, and then she moved away, and then we reconnected when we were in our 20s, and we were basically you couldn't separate us. And then she moved away, and now we aren't as close anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But the door is still open for that relationship. If she ever were to come back and was calling me more often, I'm totally
You're not mad and angry about it.
Right. We could pick up where we left off. I mean, that happens. Or it could literally be, you could have had a falling out, and then there's just enough time that goes by and people grow up and heal and are able to like see it from a different perspective, or just let bygones be bygones and just reevaluate and say, let's try it again. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? We go back to not talking. We've already survived.
Right.
You know?
It's something that I've really tried to do now is, and this might work a little creepy, like if you're using it with romantic potential partners, but I am the queen of sending a text that just says, hey, thinking about you, or, you know, that kind of thing. And I'll send that out to friends I haven't heard from in a while. And I don't send it with the intention of necessarily getting a response back. But I think that sometimes that does open the door, because like you said, sometimes it's out of sight, out of mind. People have a million things going on. They are not setting it up because they're trying to punish you or anything else. And sometimes you just have to be the one. Sometimes we fall into that role of keeping things together. Now, does that mean you have to be the one that always plans everything? No. But I don't know. I do that sometimes where I'm just, hey, thinking about you. Bye.
I think that can be significant too when we are aware of how busy we are. Like, you were literally one of the busiest people I've ever met. I thought I was busy, and then I met Francis and I was like, oh, never mind. I have literally no excuse. But I think that's a good tool to use also, because you're the type of person that I feel like if somebody did reach out like, hey, you know what, I was actually thinking about you too. You do make the time for people and you do care about people.
Absolutely.
But you're also aware of, I'm busy, they're busy, but I just want them to know I'm thinking about them. I'm also not going to take it super personal if you don't hear back, but it's just kind of throwing out like a, hey, just,
right,
I haven't forgotten about you. You know,
yeah, just a little connection, which I think is important. And sometimes that's enough to make somebody feel good. So that's cool. Make me feel good. At least I'm trying. What else is on your list?
All right. Next on the list, it says, ask someone for a favor. And this seems a little like your face. Let me just read it verbatim. It says, it might sound a little counterintuitive, but asking someone for a small favor can make someone like you more, according to research from the Journal of Human Relations. Asking for a favor can indicate intimacy and trust, and it can appear as an expression of esteem. When I first read the headline, ask someone for a favor, I cringed.
Which is the face I made, by the way, when Deanna said, oh, you made that face. Yes.
Right. And I think it's because, I'm going to go out on a limb. I think it's because of the field that we work in, and we can oftentimes get burnt out a little bit. Maybe I can just speak for myself, where it's like,
right track.
We're kind of on overload mode of human beings. Don't get me wrong. We love you guys. This is why we're in the field that we're in. We're helpers. But you got to be so careful about who is asking for something, what they're asking for. Is the relationship necessarily there for them to be asking?
Now add on to that real quick. To that, working in radio, where sometimes you have free stuff and access, and then everybody is asking for everything.
Right. With my Instagram account, at least 3 times a week, people will write me and say, can you please put
the GoFundMe
link in your account? Can you? Or it might not even have anything to do with money. People will ask me, can you do me a favor and post a link to this article about my cousin who's running a marathon?
Right.
Like
something.
Anything. And it's just, people are asking for favors. And once again, we did a whole episode about the art of asking and the power behind that. But I guess it all has to do with context. And the more I sat and I thought about it, like if I had a neighbor who I was building a relationship with, who came over to my house and was like, hey, can you do me a favor? Something came up, something personal, and I have to run out, and my dog, family emergency. Can you feed my dog for me? We'll be back in a few hours. And that would make me feel closer to them.
Right.
Because they trust me with their dog. They trusted me with when an emergency came up, of all neighbors, they thought to ask me. So after I thought about it and kind of put it in a context that made sense to me, I was like, you know what? This actually would help me feel closer to somebody.
It feels like every episode and Brene Brown says,
Fortunately, we're not sponsored or
no, we're not. But I do mention Brene Brown. She has a PhD. She's a licensed clinical social worker, a nod to your profession, Deanna. But she talks about how if we set ourselves up as being people who have it so together that we never need help from people, we're actually functioning from a place where we are giving off the vibe or just the image that we are better than everyone because we have everything together. Does that make sense? That we
and it also isolates you and it intimidates others and it just doesn't feel relatable.
Exactly. And so and as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh. So she's talking about cultivating empathy in the way that we have to realize that we have to ask for help sometimes. And that's exactly what this is saying. And so for me, that's been really hard because I've also grown up with this idea that I don't want to bother people. It's not so much that I try and portray like I have my shit together. It's that I don't want to bother people. I'm constantly very aware of how much, I don't know, it just goes back to a lot of stuff. But anyway, what I've made an effort of doing is I have this reciprocal relationship. And in fact, and it's only with a few people. It happened just today on the way to meeting you. My kids didn't want to sit quietly in my house while I did a podcast. So they asked if they could go to a friend's house. And she's another single mom. And I was like, hey, I know you're doing some stuff outside. She's going through a shed organizing. My oldest loves organizing. She's such a little weirdo. And my younger one wants to play with her son. And I said, would you be cool? And I just basically invited my kids over. And she was fine with it. And that's the kind of relationship we have. And we're closer for it.
Yes. That's a perfect example of this.
So we have to be willing to show we're not perfect and that we need help sometimes to be approachable. Because the connection's in the humanity, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me. All right.
So I got a favor I need to ask you.
Okay. Number 5, attend a regular gathering. By the way, this article is off of Bustle. I really like them. I follow them on Instagram. I like their stuff. It says use the exposure effect to your benefit. It just basically says if you do a book club or, this is a pretty good example. We moved into this new neighborhood where it's new construction. So it's just newness everywhere. Everyone's new. So my neighbor and I were like, let's do a bunco night, a girls, women's bunco night. And the only reason why we didn't invite the dudes is because the dudes in the neighborhood already have a lot of dude gatherings that I, by the way, like to crash. But my husband, I could see crashing bunco, by the way. Absolutely. But there would just be way too many people. There's 90 houses here. So it's we can't have everybody there. And then who's going to watch the kids? So we were like, let's do a monthly bunco gathering. We're going to have our first one. I think it's next weekend, actually.
I love that.
I'm all excited because there's going to be at least 20 women that I haven't met yet. And over time and over, just as they say, the exposure effect, use it to your benefit that, I don't know, maybe somebody's going to really enjoy bunco and so am I. And then we're going to learn that we have similarities and things in common. And then boom, you've got a new friend from that I never would have probably found, or at least it would have taken a lot longer to find had we not put together this bunco club.
Yeah. And even if it's just monthly bunco night where everybody enjoys one another, it's great. I deal with this a lot in recovery, working in recovery, because a lot of people who are trying to get sober have to realign their friendship network. And you have to put yourself in the places where you want to meet your kind of people. So, and this goes with dating too, or whatever. Let's say one of my big self-care things is I work out regularly. I'm not going to meet people who are super health conscious and want to get up at 6 a.m. to go hiking at a bar at 2 a.m. the night before.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put yourself in situations where you can interact with your kind of people. Now, that doesn't mean that you stay super close and you should try out different things, but to just, it's a numbers game. It really is.
Yeah. When I was single, I would always say, I cannot date somebody who doesn't like a dog. I just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would often go to the dog park with my dog. I would go to, if I did go to the bars, I would go to like a dog friendly bar. I was living in San Diego at the time, and there's a pretty like healthy dog loving community out there, you know, so they would have
talks to each other.
Yeah. And they would have dog meet and greet, like whatever. I went to that was the first time I went to a dog birthday party. Like, if I want to meet a guy who likes dogs, it pretty much might be here, you know? I mean, just like you said, it's a numbers game. You have to increase your odds. So you have to expose yourself to where the types of people that you want to meet are going to be hanging out.
Yeah. And we're so connected via the internet now, but so disconnected. So some great ways to meet people, some apps and things. There's one called the Meetup app, which you can basically go in and put everything from, if you're into yoga or hiking or book clubs or horror movies or whatever, and there are groups in your community that will get together and people meet up. And then there's also, I think this is maybe it's on Bumble or one of these dating things, where you can actually, instead of looking for a partner, you can look for friends.
Somebody told me about this app. I do not remember the name. I'll look it up, but it's about meeting mom friends. And I was like,
there's an app for everything.
Yes, there's an app for that. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and real quick, there's also lots of free classes that are out in the community, whether it's through your adult schools, or I was in REI the other day and they had something that was about intro to backpacking, or, so you just kind of get out and get yourself out there.
Right.
Smile more. Wink, wink.
All right. Volunteer. The next one on the list is volunteer.
Yep,
I don't want to drag this on because I do want to get to the place where we talk about how to deal with breakups.
Volunteering is great. We can just hit the bullet points.
Volunteer, once again, kind of increase your exposure. Typically, there's a very, it's not specific, but the person who is volunteering typically is very caring. They're volunteering their time, for God's sakes. They're not getting paid for this. So it takes a special kind of person who's going to be immersed in volunteering. And so if you want to make a new friend, see who else is volunteering if that's your thing. Number 7, it says share personal information. This didn't make me cringe as hard initially as the whole asking a favor, but I just want to be careful with this one because self-disclosure, as we know, is sharing personal information about yourself. The key word is when appropriate.
Yes.
And with people you want to develop a closer relationship with. So I personally just tell people the time to open up and tell people like the difficult parts of the things that you've seen or been through is probably not the first time you meet them.
Mm-hmm. Boundaries.
Right. It makes people, I think, it can make people feel really awkward.
Or too close too fast. Like, I feel like you need to earn my story.
Yeah. And also like friendships, there was a study also that said in order for somebody to go from like acquaintance to casual friend, they did this like study on it. It takes like 50 hours for people in their mind to kind of let go, okay, you're an acquaintance and now you're my casual friend. And then from casual friend to like close friend, it takes like 90 hours of like hanging out. And so 90 hours of hangout time is a lot of time for busy adults. So I feel like typically when people are my close friend is when I'll start to like self-disclose. And that's, according to this study, 90 hours in.
Yeah.
So
now there are things though where right off the bat, feel them out. And if you guys are not on the same page, then no harm, no foul. You know what I mean? If there are certain ideological, this is not going to work, then that's cool. That's fine. We can be casual acquaintances. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also we're not super by the book. Here's a pretty good example of this. The 90-hour thing went out the window. Last episode, we had Mommy's Inside Voice on our show. And her name is Amy. And Amy and I have been friends on Instagram for months now, little less than a year. And when we met for the first time, that's when she came and did our show. And then I ended up going down to Los Angeles, picked her up, and we had like a girls' day. You know, I like took her to go eat In-N-Out for the first time. And we went and saw the Hollywood sign and all that. And we had like such a cool day, and we just talked and talked and talked like we were two lovebirds in love. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like cool mom friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And like we delve into some personal stuff, obviously not all, but we definitely said things to each other that I haven't shared with some mom friends that I've made over the course of a few months that live in my neighborhood. So sometimes you will meet people who it's like, it just feels right.
You click.
You just click. But I think in the back of everyone's mind, you're also having to tell yourself, this could go wrong, but you're consenting to giving this information out. So with that, I don't feel that way about Amy. I'm just saying in general, you know.
I think as we try the friendship thing and also doing our own self-reflection and our own work, we get better at figuring out who are the safe people to share that with earlier. So I get it. I mean, our story is funny. I Instagram stalked you the first time I met you in person. Me and my kids stayed at your house. And then we started a podcast. We have not spent 90 hours together.
No, not even like close.
10. So
if that, seriously. Yeah. And 8 of those were sleeping. We were
right. Exactly.
Number 8 talks about keeping in frequent contact. So it says, I'm just going to read it. Research published in the journal. Oh God. This is the time where, remember, I should have read this beforehand because it's a word I can't pronounce. And I don't know.
This is where I skip them. And then
okay, it was in a journal. Yeah. Reporting on reciprocity.
Okay, reciprocity. That's the giving and back and forth. Yeah.
God, what is wrong with me? Okay, so
mommy brain.
Mom brain. Okay, I'll just go with mom brain. Yeah. Okay, so it's returning phone calls from a friend. For example, in underline bold caps is the strongest factor in whether friendships last. When a friend reaches out, respond. Says Gardner. When a friend needs you, be there. We get busy, and life, work, and the business of adulting can keep us from being a good friend. And it just talks about disclaimer here. We're not saying if you have a friend who's calling you 10 times a day and you have communicated to them that I work during the day, I can't pick up my phone, I would get in trouble from my boss, and they still don't respect that and continue to call. We're not talking about that friend here. We're not saying, hey, you need to call them back 10 times. If they called you 10 times, you need to call them back 10 times. We're talking about the friend who calls you once a week, once a month, and you want to maintain a friendship with them and mutual feelings exist, and you don't call them back. You don't even text them back. That's going to hurt the friendship. Point blank, period. It just is.
You know what I've been guilty of sometimes is I get avoidant. If for some reason I've forgotten to respond, and then I'm, oh my God, it's been too long. And then I'm like, oh, I can't do it now. So sometimes knowing that about myself, I will apologize. And then when other people maybe don't respond right away, I will maybe try and cast another line out there. And then after a certain point, I'm just done.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing because I am guilty of doing the thing where this is what I'm super guilty of. And I just come out and tell people. I don't know when I am not able to use this excuse anymore, but I feel like it's not anytime soon. I still wake up in the middle of the night because of my child. And because of that, like last night I went to bed at 8 p.m. So when I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I don't know where I am or what year it is because I'm so out of it, I'll look on my phone, and if somebody has texted me, I'll probably read it kind of half asleep, half awake. And then I don't respond. And then in the morning, there's no notification on my phone.
Right.
I forget that it's there, and then it just becomes disjointed and I don't know how to get back to responding to them. So for me, just in the context of that example, I'll just come out and be like, I'm sorry, I read your stuff when I was half asleep, but here's my answer. And I apologize for taking 2 days. My bad.
Yeah.
But I try not to make a habit of that, because if I do make a habit of that, then like I can't be upset if my friend gets burnt out and stops texting me. Or also on the other side of that, my friend might want to be aware that texting me, of all people, late night could not work for me right now in my life. If you're my friend, then oftentimes I can respond quicker if you were to text me or call me, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's just having the conversation. So that's important. But the important piece being, if you want to maintain relationships with people who reach out to you, then you need to reciprocate.
Yes, that is the point. Thank you for bringing us back there.
I need you, Frances.
It's what I do.
So number 9, make jokes. I don't know what that is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Laughing stupid.
Yeah. Don't hold back when it comes to your humor, it says. So we are safe.
You know what I've had to do real quick?
Yeah.
I don't go full weirdo on people, but I've learned that like if you can't handle my weirdo level from the get-go, we are not going to last, whether it is a partner or a friend. So yeah, I'm not going to give you the deep, dark, terrible stuff like me and Deanna have joked about behind the scenes. But if you can't handle my sarcasm or my sense of humor, it's like a sorting process.
Yes, I completely agree. If you can't handle somebody who cusses, and I want to be clear, I don't cuss in front of my
children,
kids, in front of my children. Yeah.
Or in public inappropriately.
Right, exactly. But if you feel uncomfortable, basically if you feel uncomfortable with our podcast, you're going to be uncomfortable all the time around me.
Because it's worse with me off of here.
So I let the weird squeak out. You know, when somebody first meets me, I'll let it like squeak out to test their tolerance level.
Right, exactly.
And then they'll come back and say something weird. And I'm like, oh my God, I found my weirdo friend, you know, and then it's sisterhood of the traveling pants. Here we go. All right. Are you ready for this lifelong journey of friendship?
Because now you're stuck with me.
Exactly. So it just says laughter can help people feel more relaxed. So don't be afraid to like bust out your personal favorite joke or whatever. Okay, so I love this next one. It says ask questions. Make a genuine effort to get to know somebody. It's easy to spot when somebody is going through the motions of listening and just waiting for their turn to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It says the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people who ask a lot of questions when getting to know someone are rated as more likable than those who ask fewer questions. This one is huge to me. Huge. I love getting to know people. I know me. I live with me every day. I don't necessarily need, I am a talker and I like people to relate to me, but I make it a point to ask questions about who you are and what your interests are and what makes you tick, you know what I mean? Because I want people to know that like I have a genuine, authentic interest in who they are and I want to get to know them. I find it personally really boring when people, this sounds stupid, but like I actually get bored of the friendship of like, you don't ask questions about me. And it has nothing to do with me per se. It has something to do with the way I perceive people who just don't ask questions about anybody around them and just want to talk.
Right. Well, it makes perfect sense because you and I, for a living, have people talk about themselves. So we make people very comfortable in our interactions. It's just something that makes us good therapists. But for it, and this is where my boundary line is I don't want to be my friend's therapist. I don't want to listen to every.
Yes.
Throw me a bone here and let's do this back and forth thing. And so it is a balance. And I think you're right. When there's,
I need to interrupt you because this is a moment. You just fucking nailed it.
Oh, tell me where it was because I forgot.
No, seriously, this is something like I was not able to conceptualize it this entire time. You just hit the nail on the head for me. It's that as therapists, we are always in the listener seat. We're always listening to people talk about themselves. And you and I do not want to be our friends' therapists. We just don't. Don't get me wrong. You and I want to be there for our friends, and
Absolutely.
we want to be a good listener. Absolutely. We can't really turn that off. But if I'm in the listener seat and I meet a new friend and they're just going on and on and on and on and on about their life and everything, and I'm just sitting there going, sounds, yeah, okay, interesting. And then they're like, okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. Should I send you a bill for my services? It feels like almost people kind of throw up on me, and then they're just like, okay, bye-bye.
So one of my big red flags for friendships, dating lately, everything. And I've had to learn how to say this and not be, if they take it the wrong way, then this is one of those sorting processes. Telling me I'm easy to talk to is dangerous because too many times that has come up. And I know people mean that as a compliment, but I hear that all the time because it's what I do for a living. However, I need to know that when I'm going to talk, you're going to listen.
Yeah.
And so it has been, and what I've really had to realize, and we talked about this earlier, friendships change and sometimes you outgrow people. The saying I love is that people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I've had to learn that there are those friends that only come to me when their life is in chaos. I've also learned that I have friends that they are super supportive of me when my life is difficult, but when I'm doing good, they can't be happy for me, which is heartbreaking. And so we'll get into the breakups in a minute, but I think that's important, going back kind of full circle, is to ask questions. It's a balance, and just pay attention to it.
And I want to say that I've had really nice people tell me, nice people who get stuck in the mode of not asking questions. We're not trying to.
No, not at all. It's just their pattern.
It's just their pattern. And I've had those same people be like, well, I don't ask a lot of questions because I don't want to come off nosy, or I don't know what people's comfort levels are.
Okay.
While that's fair to say or feel, it might not be accurate, because what you're doing now is you're making a whole lot of assumptions of how the other person might or might not feel regarding your questions. So great, use me as this example, right? If I have a friend who's not asking me any questions about my life and I just get to sit and listen to them talk for an hour straight, and I'm trying to build a friendship of closeness and intimacy, and I want you to know about me as much as I want to know about you. If that same person says, I don't want to feel nosy or assume you're going to ask, like, they would be wrong, because I want them to ask about me.
Right.
And I'm going to take it a step further, because some people get really uncomfortable with being in the listener seat because they feel like if they ask questions, then all of a sudden they need to be like a pseudo therapist and solve everybody's problems. And it's kind of like the people that are afraid to ask, how are you doing? Because if the person's like, I'm doing terrible, they're like, I don't know I need to fix this, but I don't know how. I want to take the pressure off of everybody and just, here's something, if you don't know how to do this already. If you ask them a question, even how's your day, and it's like, it's been really shitty, you can just be like, I'm really sorry to hear that. Having hard days is tough. That sounds rough. Like, that's literally, like, that could be validating to somebody. And it probably is validating to most, because you're not offering advice. They didn't ask you for any advice. They just expressed something, and you're validating their experience of it being a shitty day. So don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't assume that people don't necessarily want you to ask questions about them, because if they don't want to tell you anything, they'll let you know. Mm-hmm. Whether it's body language or them saying like, I don't feel comfortable talking about that. And don't take that personally. Try not to take that personally either. So I'm just trying not to make assumptions about what people necessarily want you to ask them, because if they're standing in front of you and they're trying to have a friendship with you, then chances are pretty good they would like some closeness instead of just being a sounding board for you, because that's boring to me.
And if it is a pattern where that's not working for you, then you've gotten the information and you move along.
Exactly. All right. So the last one on this list might be my favorite one. It says, get a dog. I can't make this up. It says having a pet can do more than just keep you company at home. It can help you make friends. People with dogs appear to be more approachable and meet more people in general, according to multiple studies.
Did you just write this one at the bottom? Was it really 10 ways to make friends and you made it 11?
It does seem a little suspicious, but I assure you, it's on here. And it has a golden retriever, which is one of my favorite.
I have a hard time walking up to people, but if they have a dog, I'm like, oh my God, where's the puppy?
Right, exactly. And then everyone just talks to the puppy and doesn't even ask the human being their name. Oh my God, what's your dog's name? Let me stare at your dog. And you don't even make eye contact with the person. I'm guilty of that. Maybe. Let's talk about breaking up with a friend.
Real quick, I want to throw this in here because we just went through all of these things on ways to make friends, and somebody might be listening and going, why? It sounds like a lot of work.
What's the point?
To that, I want to throw in here 5 reasons why, according to the Mayo Clinic, there are benefits to friendships. The short answer is good friends are good for your health. Friends can help you celebrate good times and provide support during bad times. They often prevent loneliness and give you a chance to offer companionship. And also, 1, they increase your sense of belonging and purpose. 2, they boost your happiness and reduce your stress. 3, they improve your self-confidence and self-worth. By the way, if you have a friend that does not increase your self-confidence and self-worth, you might want to reevaluate that. We were talking about that earlier. 4, they help you cope with traumas such as divorce, serious illness, job loss, or death of a loved one. And 5, this is important, they can encourage you to change or avoid unhealthy habits such as excessive drinking or lack of exercise. So one other thing I want to point out in that one is if you are trying to make yourself better, and so you're cutting back on drinking, maybe you're trying to eat better, maybe you're trying to exercise more, recognize that if a friend is not supportive of that, and you're not being pushy about it or anything, then that's where you evaluate on, is this really going to work? Because sometimes when you start making positive changes, the people around you aren't on board for changes, and it holds a mirror up to their place in the world and in their life, and people might not like that, so they could pull you back in. And so you just need to be aware. So that's according to the Mayo Clinic. And not everybody needs a ton of friends. Some people are, like a smaller number, but in general, friendships tend to be an important part of life.
Okay, so before we go on to this article about how to break up with a friend as an adult, I want to admit something. As much as I'm all for making good friends, have you ever, so I've got 2 best friends who have been my best friends for 15 years now. I'm going to admit, I want to see them happy. Okay. One lives in Texas, one lives in San Diego. I get a little jealous when I see them making new
Other
mom friends.
Yeah, that's okay. No, that's okay.
And we've got this, I'm so grateful that my sisterhood with these 2 girls are so strong, because once again, we have a lot of similarities in our personalities. So we've got this running joke now where, like, if one of us posts a picture on Facebook or Instagram of one of us and our mom friend, the other 2 girls will be like, all right, I'm not feeling comfortable with this.
Okay. So you've addressed it though.
Yes, I've addressed it. That's a very good point. This is something that we've talked about, that we've used humor about to be like, I've texted one of them and been like, I need details on this new friend that's really cute, and she looks like she would be my friend too. And so what's up? Some people might think this is like really weird, but it works for our friendship and our lives, where, like, if I were to plan a trip with some of my mom friends that I met in my neighborhood, my new mom friends.
Mhm.
This is something that I will actually talk to my best friends about so that they're not hit with pictures of me enjoying the Caribbean with a bunch of new mom friends, because that would be hurtful.
This is the world we live in where we need to address this stuff. And that's very adult. That's very adult.
And I'm also one of those types of people that like, I will cast kind of like a wide net in terms of invitations. I know you and I have had offline conversations about this, where like, if I'm planning a trip, let's just, as an example, to the Disney cruise, we're going to fly to Florida and go to Orlando and go to Disney cruise. Even though I know that my two best friends are probably not going to be able to go for one reason or another, I still invite them, knowing that I also invited my new mom friends who may or may not go too.
Mm-hmm.
I might not, I'll tell everybody, but I really focus on my lifelong best friends to let them know, like, you're invited to this. Even though in my heart, in my head, I know they're not going to go, I still invite them because I don't want them feeling like anything was planned behind their back.
And that's just the standards for the relationship you negotiated.
Right.
I think what's important is there might be some people that go, well, I don't need to clear it with my friends or this, that, or the other. Look, your standards of communication are going to vary with your friendships. And that's important to take into account. I think that pretending it wouldn't hurt your feelings is not honest. There are people I'm no longer friends with that I always was like, wait a second, you can, and this goes into the breakup thing, I can always invite you to come do things with my friends and invite you into my circle, but how come I'm never invited into your circle?
Right.
It's not very fair. And it just made me feel like I wasn't, not that I need to be front and center on everything, but it just felt lopsided. So I think what it comes down to is you guys have used humor to handle it, and it's silly, but it works, and more power to you. And I think it's just like in real relationships that are satisfying with an intimate partner, friendships require having those vulnerable, complicated relationship talks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when they don't work, you break up sometimes.
We sometimes break up, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So, have you ever had to break up with a friend? Have you been broken up with?
Broken up with, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell me about this, Frances? Are you willing to talk about that?
It was a situation where, I kind of just talked about how I was never included in the group, but was always in my group. And this hurts. This hurts more than talking about my divorce. Sis. Because there's two. The particular situation where I'm thinking about, though, is we had a falling out over something. It was a boundary kind of violation. And then it turned into what I see now is this particular person has big blow-ups with friends, and then they come back together. Big blow-ups, come back together. And I don't function that way. So then it just kind of, we had this moment, this thing that went down, kind of separated. And then it was like I remember I got blocked on Facebook or something stupid. Really? Like, you've unfriended me? Okay. And then fast forward, we just had nothing to do with one another. And then I ran into them at an event, and I was like, I'm going to be the bigger person. I felt good about myself at the time. I was in a good relationship. I'm 95% of the fucking time I have to be the bigger person. Anyway.
Do you feel some kind of way about that?
I went up and said something. Yeah, I know, right? And I went up and said something, and she legit thought I was going to start a fight with her. I've never been in a fight in my life. Don't take that as a challenge, because I'm well equipped. But I've never gotten into like a verbal argument somewhere. That's not how I roll. Anyway, long story short, we kind of reconnected. It was good. And then there was this falling out again. And it was because, I think it was one of these situations where I'm okay. We're good when I'm bad, but when I'm good, we're not good. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it hurts. It fucking hurts. And so what I've had to tell myself is I'm very thankful for the path that took, because it put me in some different places that I wouldn't have been before, but it hurts. And I can't, it is what it is.
Yeah. In fact, this article talks about like the number one thing is first know how to identify a toxic friendship that might be more draining than it is rewarding. It gives examples. You feel drained after hanging out with them. You don't like how you act when you're around them. You need to psych yourself up to hang out with them. In your case, it says the balance is way off. Either they don't reciprocate your effort or vice versa. They make you feel bad about yourself. They pressure you. They guilt trip you. You guys fight a ton. You just don't like each other anymore and don't respect one another. It could almost be, I've been in friendships where it almost feels like, it's like a relationship where it's like not totally horrible, you know, and you're just like,
but you're invested.
You're invested and you're like, wait, it's not like they're doing anything crazy, but I still don't feel good about this. I don't feel right. I don't feel totally respected. That takes time, you know, but I think it's good to just always evaluate what's going on, how people are making us feel, and then kind of making our decisions from there. So then what they talk about is once you decide which kind of route you want to go, what do you want to maintain the friendship? Do you want to let go of the relationship? Setting new boundaries for your friendship, phasing it out slowly, or like formally ending it are different ways of going about it. And there's not one right way to approach it because everything is so unique and case by case, and everybody's relationships and their dynamics are just so diverse, and it's just so personal, you know? So it really comes down to you knowing yourself best and what's best for you and deciding what you want to do. But I think the important thing is even though there's no right or wrong way, I think we can speak toward boundaries, which we always do. You know, if you have a friend, once again, who's calling you 10 times a day and getting pissed off that you're not answering the phone, then a boundary would be, hey, I'm super sorry. Monday through Fridays, I'm at work and I can't pick up calls because if I do, then my boss gets mad at me. And if the friend still doesn't respect those boundaries, then you need to possibly reevaluate things again and try another route, you know? So if you care about the friendship and they're doing something that's upsetting you, maybe not giving up on the relationship just right out of the gate, like forget it, I'm done.
It might require some work. And if they're trying, just like any relationship, it might be worth the effort. But then at some point you have to recognize, if that's the case, that it's over.
Right. I also like how it talks about how some friendships are solely text-based. Like you guys never, ever, ever, ever talk on the phone. And sometimes you rarely even meet in real life. If all you do is text, then breaking up with a friend via text could be okay. But it says if texting is not your main mode of communication and it's not unusual for you guys to have in-depth chats in person, if you have something to talk about and potentially like breaking up with one another, your friendship, then do not text them. Do not don't break up with them, so to speak, via text. If texting is not your main mode of communication, that is just going to make things worse for everyone.
That's a dick move.
Yeah, it is. Don't do that. Don't be a dick. Okay.
One thing I did want to mention when we were talking about earlier, and it's so silly because sometimes I'm like, it still hurts to talk about it. That particular friendship is what turned me on to the Hilarious Humanitarian Instagram.
What?
Yes.
See that, guys? Are you
That's what I mean.
Serious?
Never would have. I mean, I probably would have found you eventually, but it was specifically, hey, you should follow this account.
Wait, do you think she listens to our show?
She'd never admit it.
Whatever. You don't have to admit it, girl. You're still listening. Well, guess what? Frances is my friend now.
Well, and it's no hard feelings.
I'm being protective.
I know. And you know what? You should be protective of your friends. But anyways, it's just interesting because that's where I had to kind of reevaluate where life has gone.
Well, that's really interesting because, okay, once again, I don't know her. I'm not talking crap, but she hurt your feelers. And then I am being a protective friend. And it's just so weird because my whole account is very much about like being inclusive and not excluding people and making people feel warm and
I don't think any of it was on purpose. I think it's
Okay,
just
fine.
patterns and habits. But I love
I'm
you
being
for being
salty.
protective.
Okay, I'm being protective
Okay.
and I'm being salty. Moving
Let's
on.
never break up, Deanna.
We won't, I promise. Okay, so it also talks, and I appreciate this one. It says if you're going to meet them in person to discuss hard things or to maybe break up, you pick a place and a time the same way you would do in a romantic breakup. The main takeaway is if you know they're going to work after this conversation, can you please hold off on having this conversation until they're like done with their important things for the day?
Yes.
So I will never understand the personality that breaks up with somebody when the other person is on their way to a job interview.
Oh, yeah. On any
That's
level.
just pure selfishness as far as I'm concerned. So once again, don't be a dick, please. Don't make me salty or protective.
That's the takeaway.
Yeah. Cut it out. My blood pressure cannot take it. Just do unto others. You know what I mean? Like, this conversation is hard enough and breaking up is hard to do. So just make sure that everybody gets to go home to cry in their bed and cuddle with their dog instead of needing to show up and being an adult, like at a job interview or their job or whatever it is. Because that's tough. This is tough, guys. Okay. What's the next one? Oh, yes. Don't use the excuse of being busy, no matter how tempted you are. Don't do it. Relationships aren't working. Friendships aren't working. Stop. I mean, okay, let me say this. If your friend sucks and they're hurting your feelings all the time and you're thinking about breaking up with them and they keep calling you, but they're also being a dick, I guess you can blow them off and say they're too busy. Who knows? But if this is like a friendship where it's just you guys respect one another, but you're just growing apart,
Right.
then don't ghost each other and don't blow each other off. Because once again, going back to what we were saying, the whole like, I'm just too busy right now is just
not cool.
It's not cool. It's just, you're just putting things off and it's disrespectful.
It goes back to you make time for the things that matter. And it doesn't necessarily have to be mean or harsh, but it sometimes we have to prioritize if we're going to maintain healthy balances. And sometimes things, this can be mean or harsh, but it's reality. Sometimes some things just don't make the cut.
Right. Okay. So then the article goes on to say, if you do decide it's important to tell them how they hurt you or where things went wrong, give some thought to your intentions and whether it's worth it. And what they mean by that is they say it's completely normal to have the urge to go into detail, but you have to be realistic about what they're willing to hear. So for instance, if you're ending a friendship because they never listen to you and they're selfish, feedback will probably fall on deaf ears. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have to ask yourself, is there a realistic chance of helping this person out? Or is it truly trying to get the last dig in? So
yes,
if this person is a narcissist and they're selfish and everything is your fault and they make you feel like shit, then chances are if you get the courage, I applaud you for having the courage to stand up to this person. But I regret to inform you that they're not going to hear it.
What I say is, what is your ideal expectation for this encounter? And what is your realistic expectation for this encounter?
Right.
And that goes with any breakup, any relationship that's coming to an end.
So to wrap this up, I want to ask you a question. So what happens if you have the same friend group or friends in common? And okay, you and your friend break up, but you guys share the common, and this happens with friend groups and like
all the time
and others, right? People will say, oh, they got this friend in the divorce, or
yeah.
I had an ex-boyfriend where he and I broke up and it was not good. And we literally have not talked since we broke up. And that was years ago, but we have mutual friends and they would invite me to like New Year's, and I knew he would be there, and they would say things like, just so you know, he's going to be there. And I'm like, well, good, because you guys are friends with him and I'm friends with you. And so if I decide to show up, then that's my decision, but I'm not going to be in a position where I'm like, well, you shouldn't be friends with him because he was mean to me. That's up to them. I can't tell them what to do or what not to do. I do think that it's a good idea to let your mutual friends know they don't have to pick a side to minimize awkwardness or people feeling pressure. Like, you don't have to say anything other than, me and this person are going through a hard time. Neither one of us expects you to choose a side, and neither of us want to lose your friendship, just to minimize that potential fallout. But I think it is good for people to know what's going on.
Yeah, I think so. And I think in my situations, this is where I was joking earlier, where like I always have to be the adult. It served me well, in that mutual friends and friend breakups, we've been together. We've been fine. And sometimes you are just going to lose out on people, and that's okay too. It sorts itself out. What's funny though, you said that in divorces, I literally had lunch yesterday with a guy that I met friend-wise through my kid's dad. And occasionally we just hit each other up and have lunch spontaneously just to catch up, because some of our life stories are the same. And it's just funny because I was never friends with him. He was my ex-husband's friend, and we became friends after we split up. It was just funny how it all worked out. But I think if you can be mature and adult-like, you will find the people that are mature and adult-like. Now, the people that get all catty and whatever, deuces, I'm out. I don't have time for that.
Yeah. And just to end this, if you're the one getting broken up with, be patient with yourself. This is a life lesson. Life is filled with they're filled with hurtful moments, or people letting us down, or people breaking up with us. But that truly it's just a part of the journey, and you are going to learn things from it. You are 100% going to be okay. Take care of yourself and reach out to your friends who do make you feel okay, but give yourself some time. You're going to have to recover from it.
Being hurt
will be okay.
Being hurt means that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and to love on whatever level. And so I think, and I am the queen of looking for silver linings, even in the shittiest situations. So for instance, professionally, my life is different because of that person. And then also, look, I found Hilarious Humanitarian on Instagram.
We're buds.
So as we wrap up, I know, right? As we wrap up, Deanna, we talk about self-care and or pushing your comfort zone. The reason is the science shows that doing these things makes you feel better and also builds resiliency. And the reason why you and I needed to record today in the middle of the day is because you are trying to socialize more.
I am. It just totally falls the line with making new friends. So for self-care, I am working on developing new mommy friends, and usually past 4 p.m., I will fall into the category of I am too tired. We are 2 hours out from bath time. I'm just trying to make it to bedtime and have, peace and quiet, which is important. But I also think it's important for me to work on my friendships with people in the neighborhood. So for a piece of self-care, I invited our neighbors over for dinner tonight, and I'm actually really, really excited about it. So, and this is a newer mom friend that I've made over the past month, and she's awesome, and her husband's awesome, and her kid is awesome, and so things are looking up for me and this new mom friend. That's my self-care piece, is just kind of putting myself out there and working past. It's the excuse of I'm too busy. My excuse is I'm too tired.
Okay. And it'll be worth it.
I'm working past that, and I know it'll be worth it. So what did you do for self-care this week?
I slept in today, and this is hard because my best friend on Saturday mornings, he works out of town. He lives out of town, but on Saturday mornings, he does a Saturday morning workout because he leads a bunch of stuff. And I had to tell him, and I didn't want to be mean, but I told him Saturday mornings are the only day I can sleep in. And I love you very much, and I want to be very supportive of you. And I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I'm probably not going to come on Saturday mornings. And that was really hard because I know how much those things mean to him and us spending time and all of that. But I've just been trying to work on the sleep more. to be perfectly honest, because you make time for the things that matter. And I realize I have got to get more sleep. So
yeah,
that's
I don't know how you function. Of all people I know, like I'm like, how do you function? You don't sleep very often between the radio show and the early mornings. And then you're like going to concerts till like 1 o'clock in the morning. But then you're like a workout queen. I'm like, what?
You know what my Friday night was? And this made me so proud. Oh my goodness. So my Friday night was my kids decided they like to go to the gym late when no one else is there. I have a key if my friend has the place. So we all did a workout. Me and my 9-year-old, she's almost 10, she worked out with me. And I'm thinking their memories are going to be this. And it could have been like annoying or whatever, but they see what I'm doing and it's positive. And anyway, it was fun.
That's awesome.
She is a beast. I'm kind of jealous of her ability to do the monkey bars, to be perfectly honest, little brat.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like that you were able to do that with your kids. Okay, I have a fun it's not fan mail, it was a comment that was left on iTunes. Okay, here it goes. Says, we, you girls and myself, drink coffee and cook dinner daily, or at least that's what it feels like. I love to listen to you ladies on my way to work and while cooking dinner. My husband pretends he's not listening, but I know deep down he loves listening as much as I do, as I heard him laughing from the bedroom. This is by far the best podcast I've ever listened to. The conversations, topics are so organic and real. I can relate and connect in so many ways. Keep up the good. See you ladies at dinner.
I love it. I wanted to share this one. It was a repost of our podcast that we had put out this last week. She goes by I Am Jam Jar. She says, it's my favorite day of the week. PJs are on, beverage poured, and it's time for self-care.
Yay!
If you haven't already, please give their podcast a try. If you don't like it, I will make you a cake. Then there's an asterisk. It says, cake for people I know, because I reckon everyone I know will like, if not love, the podcast. Also, the cake may get eaten before I can even give it to you.
I love that.
And I'm trying to figure out, I don't think this is the same woman. I don't think it's the same. I'm trying to put it together. No. I also get snaps from someone that goes by Lindy on Snapchat. She sends me pictures and footage from this cute little place in Ireland where she lives. And she listens while, having a beverage and enjoying Ireland. So
I love Ireland. I went to Dublin once and I was like, what? These people are so nice.
I asked if we could come visit.
I want to come visit.
We could call it a work trip.
We could. Okay, guys, I know we've got a lot of international listeners. Francis and I are open to a work trip. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
You guys are welcome to host us.
Our listeners are amazing. So please, if you haven't already, please rate and subscribe, grab random phones and just go into that podcast and hit subscribe too. It's been a long edition of the show, but there's a lot to cover in friendship. So hopefully you can take away some little nuggets here.
All right. We'll see you guys later.
Before we do that, Hilarious Humanitarian on Instagram. Shut Up Skippy on Instagram and Snapchat.
I almost forgot the most important part. Sorry. Yeah, me. I guess you can find me at Hilarious Humanitarian on Instagram. Our Instagram page for the show is Humanitarians Podcast.
And I'm Shut Up Skippy.
And Francis is Shut Up Skippy on Instagram and Snapchat. Should I do Snapchat?
It's fun. It can be fun. But you know what? You have you have boundaries and we have time and things.
I know, right? If anybody can figure out how to add 10 hours to the day, maybe I'll do Snapchat.
Because I would sleep 9 of them. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.